Hello, welcome back to Enlace After Dark. My name is Jesus Delgado, and today we'll be talking about cameras and things we believe you should do and stuff like that. And here to discuss with me is my friend. Go ahead.
Hi, my name's Tim Ramos. I'm the photo editor for the Mesquite News here at Temusa, and I also frequently volunteer here at Enlace.
Yeah, you work a lot with cameras, right?
Yeah, I
So,
do.
go ahead. No, go ahead.
I do have a bit of a history with cameras. I've been shooting for about 9 years now. I started when I was in middle school, and since then I kind of just evolved into loving cameras more and more. It's pretty much something that I do daily now that I'm with the Mesquite. What about you? What do you do?
Well, I definitely don't have 9 years. I'm more around the 5 year mark, coming around May, so I'll be doing it for 5 years. I started my senior year of high school. I did it just as a hobby. I didn't really attend for it to become much, but it has. Um, Now I do a lot of weddings, quinces, and stuff like that. Um, but now I'm here in Enlace, and we work with video cameras. So the knowledge I have, gathered from the past 5 years of doing this, has been quite well actually. Um, but yeah, so where do you want to start today? Because we
Uh,
have a few cameras on the table today. I don't even know if we're going to talk about them. They might just be there for props.
Yeah, I don't know if we're gonna go over all of these cameras, but I do think this should be a nice episode to where we can kind of just introduce photography because it is something that's gathering popularity more and more, especially among people our age and also in high school.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of becoming a trend of people wanting to become photographers, and I think a lot of that has to do with smartphones becoming as powerful of cameras as they are. And because of that, more and more people are wanting to get into photography, but it's really tough to know where to start. I remember when I started, I kind of was fortunate and my mom had a camera, and that's how I got into photography. But that's not the same story for everybody. A lot of people have to go out and buy that camera themselves. And I think it would be a good idea for us just to kind of explain what should people look for
Mm-hmm.
when they're out camera shopping, and what's something that maybe they should think like, oh, this is a feature I should get, this is a feature I shouldn't get. And I do think a lot of that comes down to one, what is your budget, and two, what do you want to do with your camera,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah, I'm on the same boat as you. When I started, my dad had a camera,
Mm.
and it was a Rebel. So I started with that, and I've slowly built my way up, and I've been doing it there. But as a disclosure, camera gear and everything camera is never cheap. So when we're talking about prices and stuff like that, it may seem high at some point. Um, that's just kind of the way the camera industry is. Nothing here is really cheap. I mean, you
Yeah,
could get some fairly cheap cameras and stuff like that, but when it comes to like depending on what you want to do and how you want to do it, it gets very expensive. It's an expensive hobby.
it's an odd thing because we can say like yes, it's very expensive, but it's actually kind of also becoming more affordable than it used to be.
That's true.
Because cameras used to be like normally $5,000, $6,000, and that wasn't like uncommon. Nowadays, they're still expensive. They're still like 3,000, 4,000, but they have dropped. But it's not the same for entry levels. I remember, I think the Rebel that I used was about $500 to $600 when we
No,
bought it.
same with mine. Did it come with a lens? Mine didn't come with a lens. It was an extra $100.
I think so. We might have got it like on a deal or something. But
Oh, okay.
the thing about entry level is it's the entry level cameras have gotten more expensive. The entries have gotten more expensive, and the pros have gotten less expensive. And it makes it kind of tough for people that want to get into
Mm-hmm.
photography. And it's especially tough when you see how good phone cameras are nowadays, and you see like, do I really need to spend $1,000 just to get a camera when my phone can do a pretty good job? And that's kind of, I think it's a challenge for people that are trying to get in to photography, knowing what they want to do. And it's also a challenge for camera manufacturers to really differentiate
Oh,
themselves
yeah.
enough from phones to even make the purchase worthwhile.
Mm-hmm. And I think the biggest difference from like a camera itself and your own phone is just going to come down to background. It's like typically phones, when it comes to people, animals, or subjects, uh, whatever the subject is, it's really good quality. But it's the background and the way it's lit and stuff like that because they do a lot of AI stuff. And I think that's where it falls apart, and these cameras excel.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
I think I would say that there's two types of photography that if you want to do them, you should really look into getting like a DSLR camera. And I think that's wildlife photography and
Okay.
sports. And the reason why is because both of those have very fast moving subjects, and that can make your phone camera kind of struggle to get them in focus all the time. And they also take photos pretty slow compared to these. And with that, I think you're able to get more out of your camera, and you're able to get those shots that you otherwise wouldn't with a phone with a camera like this. So I think now that we've kind of gone over like the differences between a phone camera
Um,
and
Actually, I wanted to
DSLR.
add to your list because I know you said wildlife and sports. I was gonna say events. Anything
Really?
with like really low light. Because with a phone, they've gotten better low light, but there's movement in low light. It's just gonna be blurry in the photo. So these you could get really good low light photos and not have that motion, that blur or the motion blur that you're trying to get rid of with your phone. These tend to excel in the lower lights.
I think that's a good point too. So, there's reasons to keep your phone camera, and there's reasons to go out and buy a camera. And I think that really depends on what you're doing with your camera. And I also think that's important to mention, like, we throw around the term DSLR, we throw around the term SLR, but for a lot of people, they really, it's kind of tough to throw this jargon around if people don't know what it means. So first of all,
Well, I just want to say, I don't know what DLSR or SLR is, or I know it comes down to like the shutter, like what's not the shutter, the
kind of.
the cover, but that's about it. I don't
So-
really know the difference, and I've been doing this for years.
So a DSLR, it stands for digital single lens reflex. And what that pretty much means, it's a digital camera, it has one lens on it, and it's a reflex. So you're able to take it off, put a different one on. And nowadays, the people are just calling them SLRs. And there have been these new cameras that have come out called mirrorless cameras, and you actually have one over
right
there.
here.
And the difference between that is there's no, like the name suggests, there's no mirror in that camera. And these are kind of the newer ones hitting the market. These are typically pretty expensive, but you can also find some beginner-friendly ones. They are
There's the
they are
R10.
expensive. From Canon, you have the R10 and the R7, and there's also other brands. We just happen to specialize in Canon. You also have your Sony, your Nikon, and here is a video one. This one can do photos, but
it's made for video. And
it's
it
made for
should stay
video.
there.
It's a camcorder. This is another video one. This is a Blackmagic. It's a different brand than Canon, but it does take Canon lenses. And
That's more of
what we
a
use on it.
cinema camera.
Yeah, this is something that I wouldn't really suggest for someone who's new to get this. This is if you're into filmmaking.
But even here with the cinema cameras, you're not going to get as much as, let's say, a DSLR or a mirrorless camera. What's going to happen is you're going to have more manual options and you have to do everything yourself with a cinema camera. And more like a mirrorless camera or a DSLR, you're going to have more automatic where the camera's going to take care of the problem for you.
And I would say for people that are just starting out, there's really no reason to like immediately go to manual. I think there's a lot of pressure for people to immediately go to manual. There's a lot of gatekeeping, I think, in the photography community, telling people that like, oh, you need to have this camera or this lens, or you're not a professional, or you need to shoot manual. And it's really something you should just take at your own pace. For I think a couple of years, I didn't even know manual existed. And that pretty much had me locked into auto modes. And over time, of course, I learned about manual and I learned that. But I wouldn't tell anybody to like rush themselves and you need to shoot manual all the time, because it can make photography a pretty unfun experience if you just dive headfirst into it. Some people like that challenge, some people don't. And with these new cameras, you can really just do auto and you're gonna get great images. So no problem shooting in auto. I think if you're just starting out, it's something maybe you should do. Maybe focus more on composition, focus more on what is it that you want to take photos of, and worry about the settings later. You don't have to take it all at once.
Okay. I actually agree with you there. Yeah, these cameras auto is amazing, and you're gonna have very little problems. But if you want to go into the field where you're getting paid and stuff like that, I think Tim will agree. You really have to learn manual, and there's a lot going into that with the ISO, shutter speed, and the f-stops. So that's something you gotta all take into account. They all lead to the same thing, but they all do it very differently.
And I do think that's something that we probably won't discuss in this podcast, but it is something that we can probably make a video on, just explaining how those three settings work, because we could be here all day if we just talk about those 3 settings. And I think that that's something that kind of warrants its own video. I guess here we're kind of focused more on just cameras themselves and not necessarily how to take photos. But for someone who is starting out, how would you recommend they go about getting their camera?
Well, I don't want to sound biased or anything, but I'm gonna say Canon. Now there is some biasm there because I understand Canon. So if someone comes to me and is like, teach me how to use a camera, I'm gonna tell them to get a camera that I know works from the entire spectrum, from beginning to intermediate to even professional cameras like this one here. And from there, I'll just teach them how everything goes. I think everyone coming off just needs something with a fast shutter, because I think a lot of people want to take just pictures of their kids and stuff like that, and they're typically running around a lot and stuff like that. So something that's going to be quick. And when it comes to lenses, I just tell them to stick with the kit lens. They don't need anything special with a low f-stop or anything like that. We might have to get into it just a little bit.
We can touch on it, sure.
Yeah, because with a low f-stop, it'll makes the background blurry, makes it the lens a little bit faster and stuff like that. But with kit lens, it's going to do exactly what you need. That's, how would you say it? Because it's doing everything right. It's just not.
It's not excelling in anything, but it is getting the job done. And nowadays the kit lenses are pretty good. I remember when I used the ones on my Rebel when I first got them. You could tell a night and day difference between the kit lens and when you go out and actually buy a dedicated lens. Not a dedicated lens, but one that is different from what you have.
Lens.
So yeah, I would say don't be afraid to use the kit lens. There's nothing wrong with them, especially nowadays. They can take great pictures.
Another thing that I recommend to people when getting a new camera, because of the day and age we're in, I highly recommend mirrorless cameras because of their autofocus and eye tracking. When it comes to regular DSLR, you have to move around your own focus point. And, well, there's an auto for it, but it's going to miss a lot. So your photos may come out blurry or something like that. These new mirrorless, their autofocus is really good. It may miss here and there, but it's going to miss a quarter of the times the DSLR is going to miss.
And I think just adding on to that, the mirrorless cameras also, I think they're just more intuitive. If you pick one up and you're used to using a phone, we're all used to just tapping the screen and that's how it focuses. And you can do exactly that on those mirrorless cameras. Not only can you do that, but you tap it once and it pretty much knows what you're pointing at and it's going to stick to that person. The downside of those is that they're kind of expensive and they're still kind of new.
Yeah.
So you're not going to find a used market for them. And that's another thing I wanted to get into. But with those, you're going to get great picture quality, and it is going, especially if you get the R7 or the R10, it's going to be better than your phone. But it's just, are you willing to spend that much money? Because I believe the R10 comes in at about $750.
That's what I was gonna say, but I was just gonna confirm it really quick. Yeah, I want to say it's like $750, around $800.
The R10 is it's under $1,000, and I do believe the R7 is over $1,000. But you are able to do things with those cameras that you just can't with your phone. They do take pictures much quicker. So if you have, a little sibling, if you have a kid and you're taking pictures of them at their soccer game, their baseball game, you can freeze that motion and make sure that you're not getting any of that blur that you would get with your phone. So that's something to think about as well. And, to go on with this, I do think photography is a bit of a unique market where you can reliably buy something used and it would be still very good quality.
That's true.
And that's another thing. I think people just should not be afraid of buying used. There are several used markets you can go to. You have B&H used. There's one that I frequently use, KEH. I buy almost all my gear from them, and I've been able to get great results. Everything pretty much functions the way that I would want it to. And, there's just so much good gear out there. And I think that's something that people should really consider when they're looking to get a camera, is to buy something used, because you can get a great deal on those. For example, this lens that I'm using right now, I think it goes for about a little over $1,000.
Yeah, a little over $1,000.
And I think I probably got like $300 or $400 off of it, and it was great.
I just want to say, because that lens, you can always check your local camera shops and stuff like that. Because I checked mine earlier, and because I was thinking of getting a 50 millimeter,
Hmm.
they have that exact lens there for $499.
Yeah. So
It's a $1,200 lens. So and it's used. It was excellent condition. And when it comes to photography and stuff like that, these lenses and cameras aren't cheap. So people who buy them are gonna take care of it because it's very expensive and you don't like replacing it. So most people are gonna take really good care of it.
yeah, and you know, I recently also bought that exact lens as well, and that thing goes for about what, like 2,000, a little over $2,000, and I was able to get it for about 1,000, like half off
Wow.
of a lens, and of that quality, that's incredible. The pictures you're able to get with a lens like that, it's just something that for $1,000, that's a complete steal. And
Mm-hmm.
I recognize that $1,000 is still a lot, but that is a pro level lens. It's one that people use for weddings, for pretty much any professional event. It's a very versatile lens.
I love this lens.
Yeah, I love it too. So, I mean, just there's no reason I think to
Mm-hmm.
really avoid the used market in photography. You can get your camera body from there. You can get your camera lens from there. You can also even get accessories. For
Mm-hmm.
example, that adapter on there, you
Well,
could
I was
get
going to
that
bring
used.
that up.
Hmm.
One thing with the mirrorless and DSLRs is the DSLRs use what's called an EF lens. I don't know what it means. Do you know what it means?
No, I don't know what EF
Okay, it just means it's EF. Sure, we'll go with that. And the mirrorless use an RF lens. Uh, Now you can use your EF lens to a mirrorless camera if you have an adapter. So I recommend. It's expensive to get the mirrorless, and you can get the cheaper professional lenses that are EF. And just get an adapter. The adapter is about $100 or so.
I think it's, yeah, it's
Yeah.
99. Yeah.
So I get it. I agree with him. $100 is still a lot of money, but relatively speaking to what camera gear costs and all, that's a pretty cheap attachment to get to use an even cheaper lens that's still considered a professional grade lens.
Because that lens, the mirrorless version, is pushing near $3,000.
Yeah.
So would you rather get a used one for 1,000 and an adapter for 100, or would you
It's like
rather spend $900 more? You know,
more like 1,800 more dollars.
it's a very
It's
big difference. And
extremely different.
the photo quality. If you're posting to Instagram, nobody's gonna
Nobody's
tell.
gonna tell.
Nobody can tell that you
Maybe
use
another
a different
professional
lens.
photographer.
Maybe, and that's like I wouldn't worry about trying to get the best gear you can right away. It's, for example,
I think
this,
everyone should build up to it.
yeah, like this lens that I have on here, there's a cheaper version that goes to 1.8 instead of 1.2.
Yeah, it's called
And
the
that thing's,
Nifty 50.
yeah, people call it that. And it's
It's
like $120.
It's $149,
And
and it's low f-stop, so it's fast. It's an extremely fast lens, and it's super cheap.
and it takes great photos. That's
Yeah.
my first lens that I got was that.
Mhm.
And I took that thing everywhere. I pretty much got rid of my kit lenses. I didn't get rid of them. I still have them, but I pretty much never used them because I love that lens so much.
It was amazing. But another thing we gotta talk about is when it comes to like the Nifty 50 and something like this, they're both professional lenses, but you also gotta know what you want. This is a 24-70 and it zooms. The Nifty 50 stays at 50. It's a prime lens.
Right.
So if you want to get closer, you physically have to get closer. Where if you get something like a 24-70 or 24 to 105, you could zoom in to that distance.
Mm-hmm. And that is something to be aware of when people are camera shopping. I didn't even know there was such thing as like non-zoom lenses. I just assumed every lens zoomed when I first started photography. So when I first saw this, I was like, why would I want that? But then you kind of see, oh, this one can go to a lower f-stop. That's why people like them. And they are typically a little cheaper.
And people like, I don't think people realize, but it's the lower f-stop. I think everyone wants and doesn't realize it. Because that's what gives you that nice blurry background.
That background blur that the phones
Yes.
try to do. I mean, they've gotten better at it, but you
They
can
do
still
well.
you can still kind of tell though.
Yeah, you can. So a way I tell when I can tell the difference between a phone and a camera is around the edges of a person. If they take a picture, you'll see some sort of fading of the blurring going into the person or out of it. It's not going to be clean and sharp. Is what I've seen around it. But on camera, it kind of does that very well.
So I think we should also discuss, when are there reasons why somebody should just stick with their phone and not invest in a DSLR or invest in a mirrorless camera?
Ooh, that's a good one. Yeah.
Hmm.
Um, if you're just gonna use it one time and then put it away, stick with your phone. Um, and if you have like a current iPhone or an Android, those have amazing cameras as well. Probably if you're gonna stick to like family pictures, like homemade family photos and stuff like that, uh, I don't think you need a camera. You can stick
No.
with your phone. Um, I don't know what else would you throw in there?
I
Like
think
fishing.
if you're just like walking around, wanting to get some pictures, if you're like going on a date or something and trying to get pictures of something, just out with your friends,
Hmm.
you don't really need a camera like this. I would say if, like we had said earlier, if you're doing wildlife, if you're doing sports, if you're shooting in dark areas, you might want to consider getting one of these. But if it's something that you're gonna do once or twice and never do it again, I
Well,
think it'd
you
be
know
more
what?
trouble than it's worth going out and
I'm
getting
not
one.
gonna say this person's name or anything because I just want to keep it private. But I know a person who has multiple millions of followers on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok and other platforms. He doesn't use any professional cameras. He shoots all his content on his phone
Hmm.
and then just uploads it to his computer, edits it on iMovie, and then uploads it.
Yeah,
He
and
doesn't, and
you,
it got him extremely far. He
and
doesn't even use this gear.
yeah, and that's like not like to say like, oh, see, like, and he's just using a phone, but like that's how good phones are.
Yeah,
Like you don't have to think like there's such a big gap between them now. I think that gap is slowly beginning to close,
it's closing.
and it's starting to make these entry level cameras like people ask like, do I
Hmm.
really need this? And I think that's a valid question. If you're just wanting to get some simple photos of your friends, family, your pets,
Hmm.
I'd say you can just stick with your phone and you can get great images with that. You can even print them and they're going to look great.
Hmm.
And chances are, unless you're talking to someone who's been a photographer for a long time, they probably won't even know that you took it on the phone or if you took that on a camera like this because they're just that good now.
Hmm.
So, I mean, if you're looking to do more, yeah, you can totally see about getting one of these. Like I said, I would totally recommend getting something used just because of how expensive the market is when you're first starting out. And then slowly just upgrade from there. You don't have to
Hmm.
like get the
And
best of the best right away.
and if you want to make it a job, I agree with him. Start with something simple.
Hmm.
Like that's still a fairly
The
well,
lens
it's
makes it expensive,
the
but this
lens.
camera, I believe we got it for about $300 used on eBay.
Hmm.
And this was a camera that was thousands and thousands of dollars when it first came out. So, that's the thing. If you buy used, this thing still makes incredible
Still
images. It's
17 years old and still does amazing.
Yeah, it does great. So, like, there's nothing wrong with starting like this. This is how I started. This is how a lot of people are starting, just
Hmm.
because of how expensive things are. And you can still make great images with it.
And then if you're doing it for work or a job or anything like that, just build up. Do a job here, a job there, and just save up. And then when you get enough, then you can upgrade. But when it comes to camera stuff, it's all behind the lens. If you ever want to get anything good, you could get a relatively cheap body and get a nice lens. And I think that would make a bigger difference than getting a really expensive body. So when it comes down to it, if you want a nice body or a nice lens, I always say get a nice lens over the body.
Yeah, I think you make a great point that, when you're buying a camera, you're not just buying the camera. You need to get a lens to go with it too. So it's important to not put all your eggs in one basket and fully invest in one and not invest at all in the other. I think, yeah, the lenses are probably more important because when you ask
Hmm.
a photographer, what's your favorite gear? They're typically going
It's
to say
always
a
the
lens.
lens.
It's never really the camera body because it's the lens that really makes the image. So I think, the lens is just as important. Whenever I talk to someone, they're always saying, what camera should I get? But you should really be asking yourself what lens you should get as well because they're just as equally as
I
important
also want to say this: new camera bodies come out just as fast as iPhones.
nowadays. Yeah.
Yeah, so you could get a new body, and then next year's version is going to be even better. Um, but a body could last you a very long time if you take care of it. Same with the lens. If you talk to any photographer, they replace the body way more than they're going to replace the lens. The lens is what you're going to keep for the longest. And the way manufacturers are building these cameras, they're making these older versions still use I mean, these newer cameras still use the older lenses, so you could take this thing out forever, spend a lot on a lens and get a decent body, and you'll keep the lens forever, and then you can slowly just upgrade your body.
Yeah, I think you make a great point. Like the camera that I use, I've been shooting on I think for almost 5 years now, and I could still continue to use it for a while. And are there things that I would like for it to improve on? Sure, that's kind of why I got a new camera. But
You just got one of the new fancy ones.
Yeah, but I mean, you can totally shoot on a camera and a lens forever, and you're still going to get great images. You're still going to make clients happy. You're going to make, your family happy with the images. I think, there's nothing wrong with holding on to gear either. And when you first start out, when you buy a used camera or a used lens, even if it's been used for like 5, 6, 7 years, it still probably has a lot on its lifespan still.
Yeah, cameras could take up to millions of pictures before they die.
Yeah, and especially nowadays.
I think you'll be surprised on how many people don't take a million pictures.
And usually when we're talking about that, we're actually referring to the shutter life of the camera. So when you hear that kind of noise,
this one won't make it.
When you hear that, that's the shutter going off.
I don't know if they heard that back there. You want to put it? Yeah.
There we go. And when you hear that, that's the shutter going off. And each camera can usually do about like 1.5, 2 million, 3 million photos. But nowadays with the mirrorless cameras, you can actually shoot without the shutter.
So there is almost no shutter. I don't know how long these cameras last.
I don't think we're gonna see that camera die.
I don't think this camera's ever gonna die.
So
that'd be nice to never have to, because this is currently almost top of the line.
I would say that is top of the line.
This is the top of the line for Canon. It's this one's the R5.
The R5 or the R3. These are.
So this is like second place.
It depends what you want.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's true.
But
this is top of the line. It's probably never gonna die.
At least not while we're here.
When do you think it will be outplaced? Probably honestly, probably next year.
Probably next year. But
this camera would live for another 20 years.
Yeah, but
if you take care
when
of
it gets replaced, it's not going to be replaced by like a completely new camera. It's going to be replaced by the Mark II.
Oh, yeah.
The same series.
Yeah,
so,
yeah. It's going to be the same camera, just the next version.
So, yeah, and I mean, the awesome thing about them releasing cameras every year is that the one before it, it's still amazing, and you're going to get it used for like $500 off, $1,000 off. So it's not all bad in the camera market.
I also think if you get a very expensive camera, they tend to hold their value. When you take it out the door, it's still worth probably $100 less than you bought it.
Yep.
But it's gonna hold its value. They don't depreciate very much. When do you think they start to depreciate? After 5 years?
I would say they start to depreciate probably like within the year, but not by a lot.
Not by a lot. Well, yeah, within the year it's going to depreciate by a couple hundred.
If I was to sell the camera that I've been shooting on, I think I got
get $1,000 out of it.
Oh yeah, easily 1,000, maybe even a little bit more.
And if you just want to give some background on what you use and what you paid for it.
Yeah. So the camera, I don't have it here. This isn't it. This is my old camera, but I do have one that I've been using for the past 5 years. The Canon EOS R. I think it's cheaper now. I think it's about 1,400 now, or 1,800.
That's what I paid for mine. I have the RP, which is the one below you.
And the R, when it first came out, it was about $2,000, and that's pretty much how much I bought it for. But even if I try to sell it now, I think I could still get $1,200, $1,300 out of it.
So you lost, out of the 5 years you had it, probably devalued about $200. Well, if it was brand new, it devalued.
Yeah.
About $700, $800.
Pretty much. Yeah. And I think I made that much money back with clients and stuff. So I don't think it's that big of a deal having the camera depreciate over time. But, we're talking about these cameras that are not, that camera's professional. Mine, this one, I would say is kind of intermediate. I'd say yours is kind of intermediate.
I think mine's, when it came out, it was meant for beginners. Because now you have the R10 and the R7?
Those are kind of geared towards the beginners now.
The crop. But that's more for beginners. And now the one I had when it first came out, it was made for beginners. And I got the body and the lens for about $1,400. I think I could sell it for $9,000 to $1,000 still.
Probably.
Yeah.
With the lens, with the kit?
With the entire kit.
Yeah, probably.
That I bought. So mine probably just depreciated $400 or $500 as well.
So
and I've had that for 2 years now.
so
It's been replaced quite a bit.
yeah.
I know I bought it at the wrong time. I bought it and like a few months later, just a whole bunch of cameras came out that just toppled it.
So kind of changing gears, if if somebody's watching and they're saying, I want to go out, buy a camera today, right now, what would we tell them?
Well, what do you want to use it for?
Let's say they're getting it to shoot their siblings' game.
Ooh, okay. I would recommend anything mirrorless, the R10, R7. Those are crop sensors. And with a crop sensor, when you buy a zoom lens, it's going to multiply it. So if you have a 50, it's going to multiply it by 1.5. So then it will become like 70, 75.
I think Canon
around
is
there.
actually very unique in that I think theirs is a 1.6.
Is it 1.6?
Everybody else is a 1.5. I think except
Okay.
Canon. But
So Canon's a bit special. That's okay. I love Canon, so I accept all their quirkiness. But yeah, so I think you should go for a crop if you want to do sports, because I know with parents that are typically further away, get a nice like 100 to like 100 to 200 millimeter lens, and you should be perfectly fine. Especially, I'm gonna give an example of soccer. So if you get like one of the new mirrorless, I think the entire kit will be about $900 to $1,000, right? Would you assume so? For one of those crop censored mirrorless.
a kit,
Yeah.
I think maybe the R10 would
Okay.
be.
The R10 would be great for something like that. You'll get more zoom than you need. It will be fast, and then you have the eye tracking. So you just click a person, and it'll follow that person because it will do all the work for you. Just put it in auto, you'll be set if that's all you want. And then with such a long lens, it's going to be doing better than your phone. You're going to get closer. You're going to get more into action. You're going to get those cleaner, cooler shots of your kids playing sports. And it's not just soccer. It's football, baseball,
All the other
water
sports.
polo, whatever sport exists, rugby, and stuff like that. I don't know. What would you think?
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to find the R7 and the R10 used. I can't find them. I don't know if they're just like so good that people are holding on to them, but they are also relatively new. And if you are looking to get an R7, that's about $1,500. They are actually making a new camera called the R8, and that's actually the same price as the R7.
Same price, and it's a full frame,
which means it's a little higher quality.
It's a higher quality, and it's faster. Shoots 40 frames a second. So you'll get your kid's entire action. Actually, you know what? You're right. That probably would be a better camera to get.
I would probably recommend that
if they're paying around that. Well, that's just the
if
body.
they're willing to pay
if you're willing
that
to pay,
much, I think that's a great camera to get.
That's a really good camera to get.
So the other one would be the R10. And I'm pulling that up right now, and it actually has a discount. It has $100 discount right now, and you can get that for if you watch it now.
If you watch it now.
It is $880. It's a bit cheaper than the R7.
Originally, it's $979. What, $980? Same thing.
Yeah.
So
you can get a kit for about $1,300.
Yeah, which is still amazing. I think. Well, if you're paying $1,300, I would say probably get the RP, and the kit lens. I paid $1,400 for mine. Can you look that up? Tell me how much an RP is. Oh, he's looking up the DLSRs. DLSRs. Sorry, had to just make sure I was saying it right. And those are going to do just fine. You're going to put a little bit more work into them, but you're probably going to pay hundreds of dollars less. How much can you get like a DLSR? Like $400 or $500, right?
I mean, if you go used right now, I just found a Canon Rebel T3i for $56.
Oh wow!
Now that's probably not a very good deal. No, this is like without anything. That's like the worst condition you can get.
Never mind.
But if you are looking to get a Canon T3i, that's actually what I started shooting with. Is that the one you started shooting with?
I started with a T7i.
So a bit after mine, but you can get a like new one for $240.
Which is amazing.
Which I think is great for like what it can do.
$240 is a lot. We understand that.
But the thing is, that's a like new condition.
That's really good.
You can go a little bit below for excellent. You're getting $230. Or you can go for a bargain one, which I don't know if I'd always recommend that, but you can get that for $155. And I think that's just an absolutely great deal. You can find other ones like the T7i, the one you started
Mhm.
with, for $328. So, I mean, you are starting with an older camera that was made quite a while ago, but I think the point to make when you're first starting out is you don't need to have the best photos ever. I think it's more about getting the fundamentals down,
Mhm.
getting used to holding the camera, turning the dials, switching the knobs and all that,
Mhm.
and making the
And
photos that way.
we might just be making a video going into detail
And I think we
about
can.
what these knobs do. We're going to talk about f-stop, ISO, and shutters. And then that'll give you more detail. So keep a lookout for that within the next year.
Within the next, yeah, you have
Yeah.
it. You have it in about
Yeah.
6 months.
Yeah.
We'll see. It might
We'll
be sooner
see.
than that.
I'll try to get it out sooner. We'll try our best.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I do think we covered most of the things. Would you agree?
That's a lot. I agree.
We
I
did
agree.
go into
We
a
didn't
bit
talk
detail.
much about the camcorder or the cinema camera, but I think today just leaned more into photos anyway. And these photo cameras do amazing even with video. Right?
Yeah, and I think that's another point to make. You can shoot video with these too. Like,
we never said
not
that
only can
earlier.
you do that, all these great photo stuff with it,
Mhm.
you can also take video.
That one does video too, right?
No.
Oh, never mind.
That's what happens when you buy a camera made in 2005. But
Oh, okay, yeah.
nowadays they all do video. They all do 4K,
Mhm.
and yeah, I think
I think that's everything. We talked about what would be best for sports, what camera to get for a newcomer, variable prices on beginner, intermediate, and professional cameras, how lenses do well. I don't know. Do you have anything else to say?
yeah, and I think we did make a great point about comparing them to the phones as
Mhm.
well. And that's another thing I think we should all really keep in mind is, do we need to upgrade? Do we need the new camera, or can we just stick with what we have? And phone cameras have come a long way, so I wouldn't like stress too much about it. Your phone's probably doing great, but if you really do want to step it up, you can see about getting one of these.
Or one of these. Well, not this one exactly. This one, maybe a few below it, but something like this.
Yeah.
And would you say that's it?
Yeah, I would say that's it.
All right, so that's my friend Tim, and I'm Trey. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.